Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, as it will be turning quite a bit more unsettled, especially in the north and west, with most areas seeing a lot more cloud and seeing some precipitation. As I said, that rain being heaviest in the north and west. We'll then have a look at the longer range as we head through the second half of February. Of course, we've got an SSW, a stratospheric warming, propagating through the atmosphere over the course of the next couple of weeks, and again we've got to see what impact we have for that, but at the moment it's looking like it's becoming a little bit more mobile over the course of the next week or two. So more westerly winds, slightly cooler than we have now. Can't get a lot milder than we do have right now, with a southerly wind. Of course, we could get even a longer fetch southerly wind, but we can't really get a warmer wind direction than we do have at the moment. So any change in wind direction is going to be turning us a little bit cooler, and that's what we're going to be seeing probably later this week into the weekend, with more of a westerly flow coming in, slightly cooler air masses, bringing a return to perhaps some winteriness in the north, and generally a cooler feel. Of course, there's a bit of application in the longer term from some of the runs, giving the potential for some briefly colder weather, but at this stage we're not seeing anything remotely cold or blocked from any of the operational runs. Perhaps some hints on the ensembles, but that's not too unusual with outlier runs. But we'll run through it all and see what it is showing today. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. So to start on the live radar, we're recording this earlier in the morning today, and around 9 AM it is pretty much bone dry. There is some cloud around, but hopefully should break for many this afternoon, and temperatures once again will be towards that low teens mark, maybe 10 to 13 degrees. Again, of course, cooler further northwards and westwards, being closer to cooler air out in the Atlantic, and of course anywhere to the north of any higher ground, of course, could see the Föhn effect today, which may raise those temperatures by a degree or two. So if you put on the temperatures, you can see that it is pretty mild out there at the moment. You can see there are areas of frost or temperatures that are dropping down towards the freezing point down in Wales, perhaps the far southeast of England, and up towards Northern England and Scotland. Again, that's not unusual at all for this time of year, and it really occurs wherever we've got clearer skies. You can see where we've got cloud, where we're seeing more of the blues and yellows developing. Again, temperatures holding in the mid to high single digits. And you can see that we've got this big high pressure system over northwest Europe. Again, Ben actually put the precipitation charts again. Huge high pressure system across northwest Europe, and we're seeing minimal rain at all really here, and again that will be changing quite soon, but for the time being it's remaining very dry and relatively mild for the time of year. If you do put on the UKV now and have a look at what the precipitation and temperatures doing over the next 5 days, you can see today how through the afternoon it is still pretty bone dry, but we've got clearer skies coming through, a bit more sunshine, making it feel a little bit warmer out there through the afternoon. Overnight it will remain still fairly dry, but a few showers may push into the far west at times through tomorrow morning into the afternoon, just generally with some thicker cloud, but for many southern and eastern areas it's a lot brighter as well through Tuesday, with a lot of sunshine, and that will be reflected in the temperatures feeling a little bit milder out there. Again, as we head into Wednesday, a bit of a weather front pushing in. This is the more unsettled conditions pushing through later in the week, and you can see through Wednesday it does struggle to push in. Generally for many eastwards of sort of Wales, it gives just some thicker cloud and perhaps some light rain at times before it does disintegrate, before we see another more widespread deluge come in for Wednesday evening to Thursday. Again, nothing too heavy, but just widespread light to moderate precipitation, and that just continues through the rest of the working week into the weekend, with areas of rain pushing in, mainly, as I said, in the north and west with a bit of winteriness, but not exclusively, with areas of precipitation and generally thicker cloud pushing southwards as well. Again, it's not going to be amazing cold at all, but inevitably with more westerly flow, we're going to be interacting with slightly fresher air masses, so those temperatures will be quite up and down. If you do put on those temperatures, you can see this afternoon temperatures around that sort of 8 to 10 degree mark. Slightly cooler actually than it was showing yesterday, but you can still see 11 or 12 degrees across parts of Ireland. It will feel slightly milder simply because we have the sunshine out, so those temperatures might actually be slightly higher than they are showing here. Overnight, those temperatures won't be too cold, but it could drop to around freezing or to 2 degrees in central areas with those clearer skies, and into tomorrow afternoon. Again, a pretty pleasant day, 10 to maybe even 14 degrees in a few spots. So a very mild day tomorrow. Again, with a lot of sunshine, it will feel pretty decent out there. As we head into Wednesday, overnight temperatures once again could drop down to the mid to low single digits in a few spots, but nothing too crazy cold. And by Wednesday afternoon, you can see in the east 12 or 13 degrees ahead of the weather front behind it, more down to the mid to high single digits. Again, that's similar into Thursday. Thursday afternoon, once again, 10 to 14 degrees in the south, much cooler in the north as the oscillating air masses. And into Friday, cooler conditions starting to prevail. Still 10 to 12 degrees in the south, but further northwards a lot cooler, and that cooler air does come in more widely through Friday night into Saturday. It does look like here from the UKV, whenever those cooler air masses do push southwards, it does more align with the nighttime temperatures. So we see slightly cooler nights before milder air does return for the daytime. It's one of these patterns where we really are changing air mass every sort of 12 hours or so. Again, that means those temperatures will be slightly up and down. The feel light temperature will be quite a bit up and down. And of course, the changing of air masses will be accompanied by thicker cloud and some precipitation. It's got to keep an eye on that for later this week. If you do now look at the long range, if we do go over to zonal mean winds, this is something we've been keeping an eye on over the last few days. Again, it will help us see the sudden stratospheric warming attempt to propagate through the atmosphere. And you can see extremely strong warming with a very big weakening of the zonal mean winds coming up over the stratosphere over the coming days. With official sudden stratospheric warming within the next sort of 48 to 72 hours. It does remain very weak for the foreseeable future, and it does, keep us in that sort of SSW territory for a long period of time with negative zonal mean winds. However, we are seeing signs on the left chart here of positive zonal mean winds appearing right at the top of the stratosphere at 1 HPA. So again, signs the polar vortex will be recovering, but remember, you can see below that towards 10 and 30 HPA, still got significant weakening with that trying to propagate through the atmosphere. Again, on the right chart, you can see the anomalies, and it still is pretty blue for the foreseeable future in the stratosphere and the higher levels of the troposphere, but towards the surface level, not too many impacts. We saw yesterday some more blues, and we're still seeing a little bit more blues in the longer term, but nothing as substantial as you would predict from a major sudden stratospheric warming. So we'll continue to have to keep an eye on what happens. Again, most likely the last few days of February or the first few days of March as the earliest point we'll see any impacts in the troposphere. So once again, we'll keep an eye on this chart, we'll keep an eye on the various models and see if that SSW does propagate through, and if it does propagate through, what sort of impacts will it start to have. So if we do now go over to the GFS and see what that is showing over the course of the next couple of weeks. Again, high pressure over the top of us at the moment with a big southerly wind. Again, we are dragging up milder air, but nothing ridiculously mild, with it not too much of a long-fetched southerly. It does turn more unsettled later this week with more low pressure pushing in. High pressure still dominates for time in the south and actually comes over all of us by the weekend into early next week, but generally more of a mobile pattern with more westerly flows pushing in. And into the longer term, look at that, a lot more westerly, keeping us very unsettled, potentially even quite stormy as well. Just generally a lot more mobile with more precipitation and cooler air masses pushing in. Again, you look to our north, just seeing solid blues and purples and pinks. You'd expect to see maybe some greens and some yellows appearing if we were seeing some blocking. So at the moment, no signal for any SSW blocking all the way to the 1st of March. Again, it is still very much in the longer range, and of course the SSW hasn't officially happened yet, so we've still got a few more days to wait until then, and then I'm sure the models will start to catch on, and we'll start to see some very interesting charts perhaps, but of course we've got to see what actually happens in reality. If we do go over to the GEM, see how that does compare to day 10. Again, not expecting any impact from the SSW, but of course we've got to keep an eye on the blocking to our north. Again, Southerly wind at the moment, but turning more mobile over the coming days and remaining fairly unsettled. But right at day 10, a bit more of an Atlantic ridge, again keeping us slightly more settled in the south and the west, but ridging further westwards than the GFS was showing, and this would actually allow cooler air masses to push in with northern northwesterly wind. Again, nothing too cold directly here, but you'd expect once these lows start to clear, a bit of a northerly flow will come in, and again, nothing ridiculously cold, but a little bit fresher. Once again, you look to our north, and we're not seeing any major blocking at all. A bit of amplification, perhaps, towards Alaska, but again, nothing really that's penetrating the Arctic all too much. So no signs of any major blocking here. Bit of amplification, but again, that's not too unusual for the jet stream. Again, if we look at the ECMWF, a southerly wind coming in at the moment, more mobile pattern ensues with brief northerlies there, perhaps for a time. Again, introducing slightly cooler air masses, and right into the longer term, continuing to see a bit of Atlantic ridging, so similar to the GM there, with a bit of a northerly flow at day 10. Again, nothing particularly cold, but -5 isotherm coming in, the -10 for Scotland, which is quite a cold air mass, but it's very transient, coming in for 24 to 48 hours max, so it probably would give daytime temperatures in the mid-single digits, a few wintry showers here or there, and quite cold overnight frosts, but nothing really too crazy. It is just an Atlantic ridge. You need to see that Atlantic ridge much further northwards to see any sustained cold weather. So yes, a little bit of coolish conditions perhaps there for a time, but I'm not expecting anything majorly cold at all. Bit of Atlantic ridging and generally more of a mobile, unsettled flow. If we do now go over to the ensembles, you look at the latest GFS next week to 10 days, it's fairly mild and not too unsettled, but a few more precipitation spikes appearing from around the middle of this week onwards. Again, mainly in the north, but won't be exclusively. Some areas will be in the south. If you look through the last few days of February, there is a cooling trend down towards average, or maybe slightly below average for a few days, and there are some quite cold runs. Again, nothing substantially cold. Again, a few down to the -10 level, which is very cold, widely snowy sort of pattern, but we've only seen that from a few runs, and there's no real increase in that cluster. Generally, though, more towards average in the longer term, perhaps, again, signals of more mobile, more oscillating air masses, which would, of course, give those cooler temperatures. But again, we'll have to see what happens. Again, look at the sea level pressure. It does dip a little bit in the longer term. Again, signs of lower pressure coming in, and, of course, dew point keeping an eye. You can see it is slightly cooler in the longer term, but again, nothing substantially cooler. Again, if we're seeing anything bitterly cold, you see those dew points drop down to probably -5 or lower, and you can see there are a cluster there, but again, nothing significant. The majority are around freezing or above. If we do finish by looking at the ECMWF ensemble members, again, similar sort of pattern here. Mild, generally well above average for the next week to 10 days perhaps, more mobile pattern coming in with more unsettled conditions and generally cooler weather in the longer term. Again, a few runs getting down to quite cold, -10 level, but just the most getting down to -5, which is generally the level for sort of an oscillating colder airstream from the North Atlantic. So again, more mobile, probably more unsettled in the longer term, but no real signs of any major blocking at this stage or any major colder spell, but it is still potentially on the horizon and things can change very, very quickly. So yes, we're not seeing any signs at the moment, but I wouldn't count it out for at least for another week or two until we've seen the SSW properly propagate through the atmosphere, or at least attempt to propagate through the atmosphere. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you enjoy the generally mild and dry weather over the next couple of days. We'll be turning slightly more unsettled later this week, but again, by no means a washout. So make sure you do go out and enjoy it. It's fairly decent conditions for early to mid-February. And of course, if the SSW does come off, it could plunge us back into cooler or colder conditions into early March, and again, sort of delaying spring. So these sort of early tentative spring-like conditions, make sure you do enjoy them. Get out there and get active. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you do, and I'll see you again for another video soon.